Welcome back to FFA Today, and we're here now with David and Howard Bellamy. You know them best as the Bellamy Brothers. From the #1 hit, Let Your Love Flow, to 20 #1 singles and more than 50 hits on the country charts. They've performed in over 70 countries over the past 5 decades. But believe it or not, the duo came from extremely humble beginnings, something that viewers and listeners can learn about on their new upcoming show, Honky Tonk Ranch. And that ranch in Darby, Florida, has been in your family since it was bought by your great-grandfather. Is that right?
Yeah, Abraham. He was a private in the Confederate Army, and after the Civil War, he bought that piece of land that we still live on now. He and his wife moved down there and settled it. I can't imagine at the time it must have been nothing but water moccasins and mosquitoes.
Yeah, alligators.
But we've had it till this day, and you know we've actually kept it pretty natural. It's not a fancy place. It's still the old home place. You know, we've got our houses there, and there's like 4 houses, and Howard's barn is sort of the nucleus of the ranch.
We have a Christmas dinner in the barn. That's traditional for us, and so we've kept it. You know, like as much as the old way as the way we grew up.
So paint us a picture, if you will, of what growing up there was like and what the ag landscape was like in the area at the time.
You know, when growing up, we were sort of what I call the labor force. me and Howard and our mom and dad, you know, we had some cattle, but we also were sort of truck farmers. You know, we had raised crops and took them to the farmers market.
And our neighbors were our cousins and uncles, and they had ranches. We were the only boys at that age to
we worked all the ranches.
We worked all the ranches there.
Yeah.
So at some point, FFA entered the picture. Talk about that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I was in FFA, you know, entire from 9th to 12th grade in high school. And ended up singing in the FFA quartet, and you know, we won the state championship in Florida, and it was a big deal. And so I truly cut my teeth in the church singing gospel music, and then the FFA quartet. And of course, we always sang with our dad in our home, and that's kind of where we first started singing.
Yeah, our dad really was kind of the musical influence. He played Jimmy Rogers songs, taught us how to play Jimmy Rogers songs, and then we learned a lot of gospel songs, you know, from church. And then, like Howard said, he sang in FFA for 4 or 5 years. You know, that was sort of the early musical training. I played some accordion, and we picked up whatever instruments were laying around. Our house was a combination, like a used music store and feed store, and you know, it was pretty much a typical farmhouse, and that was pretty much how we were raised. You know.
So do you remember what you performed at that FFA competition?
Yeah, far above Cayuga's waters. Let our voices ring. It was barbershop, you know, which I always love barbershop. I love harmonies. There's no better harmonies than barbershop.
Do you think that being in FFA, being in that environment and with that group, do you think that helped you develop your ease on stage?
Well, it certainly helped, you know. It helped our teachers became close friends of our families. I mean, they were part of our family, our teachers and instructors, and it went on until they have both passed on now. They were part of our lives, you know, and it was what I truly loved. You know, I went on from that to be a cattle buyer from, when I first got out of school. I had bought cattle for this big company in Florida for like 5-6 years before we, got sidetracked and went in the music business. But agriculture was always, it's what we were about. Our father did day work, cattle day work for other ranches, our ranch, of course, and that's all we knew, music and agriculture.
Now, you got a big break when you were noticed by a friend of recording artist Jim Stafford, who eventually recorded the song Spiders and Snakes, which you co-wrote, David, and it went on to become a top 5 hit. How important was that to your career?
It was huge.
Yeah, it was really a big deal, because, I had a couple of bands. Howard, was singing with the quartet in high school. We were still playing with we played a lot of music in various forms. We played together, we played separately. But, when we tried our hand at songwriting, we were trying to get our our structure together. We used to drive around on the tractor, and
Oh, yeah, the tractor was a big contributor to developing your voice because you had to sing really loud, even to hear yourself on that old Massey Ferguson.
taught you to project a little
Yeah,
bit.
so you had to sing really loud, and you could, your neighbors could hear you sing above the tractor.
But I had written a few tunes and found out that, there was a producer that lived down in St. Petersburg. I didn't know anybody that was a music producer anywhere around, so we finally got a chance to see him, and he pretty much rejected everything we had. But one of the tapes I left there had a title written on it called Spiders and Snakes. And when Jim came over to the studio, Jim had a regional hit called Swamp Witch that had done really, especially in the South, had done really well. And when Jim came over, he saw that title on the tape box and put it on the machine. And that's how they really found it, because the producer, I don't even think liked the song, but Jim loved it. And so he called me, and we kind of rewrote it on the telephone, and they cut it right away, and it became a massive hit.
So the takeaway is never underestimate the power of a catchy title. And speaking of which, you had another huge hit, and if you said I had a beautiful body, would you hold it against me? A 2003 issue of Country Weekly magazine named that line as the #1 country pickup line of all time, but it actually has an origin that people might not expect.
While we were living in L.A., we lived in Jim Stafford's basement for a while because we were writing for his TV show, and Howard was road managing. And I used to watch the reruns of You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx every night. They would show the old, I think they were done in the 50s or something. And one night he said that to a tall blonde lady that was on there. And I said, that would make a really good song title. So that's kind of what planted the seed. And then I wrote that.
Now, over the years, you've built an astounding fan base globally. Just to give people an idea, in 2014, you toured in India and Sri Lanka and made history as the first country music act to do so. You also had a Norwegian #1 record, a top 5 gold record in Switzerland, and a number of hits across Europe. What is it that you think makes your particular brand of music so popular worldwide, where even very other well-known artists can't break through the same way?
Yeah.
Well, I think the original thing that happened to us was that Let Your Love Flow, our first record, was so big internationally. It was literally #1 in 15 countries, and it was at least top 5 in all the rest of them. It was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere. And we should know, because we tried to follow it. We would be in Germany one day and Japan the next. We jetted all over the world and followed that thing around and did television. But what we did right is we followed up on a lot of it, because we kept going back to those markets, and we got established very early on.
And then Beautiful Body actually
Beautiful
became
Body,
our second hit.
Yeah,
and it was
also
Song of the Year in England. So we had a follow-up. So we had, having big hits is really the key, and it opened all the doors. And at this point, we've actually toured in 72 countries. We gained a couple, yeah.
Because, at that time too, they didn't really call it country, or they didn't call it whatever. It was just, okay, the Bellamy's got this hit, here, and then Beautiful Body came along. Especially all the English-speaking countries, Beautiful Body was really a massive hit after Love Flow.
Another big part of your continued success is that you were pioneers of independent music, among the first country music artists to record under your own record label. What sort of freedom did that afford you?
A lot.
Yes.
A lot.
We didn't have to go to the record label meetings, was the great part, and hear them blow smoke.
Yeah. We were actually very surprised how successful the label became so quickly. Within 6 months of starting it, the record label had made money, and it was moving. We've now, it's now 20 years old almost.
I hate to think that,
almost 20 years
right.
old. We've licensed music literally everywhere in the world. We've done, and this year alone, we've done South Africa and a Singapore deal. It was a really good thing to do. I don't think we could have done it starting out independently. It was important to have those other hits on the major labels, but after we did, it was a perfect time to start it.
Now, it's been said the two of you are quite different personality-wise, yet you obviously share a connection via music and a strong brotherhood. You're both just really good guys. Does your relationship present more challenges or rewards?
Well, we actually, people are amazed that we're still together after 42 years, and I don't know if that's happened before in a brother act. And we give a lot of credit to our parents, because growing up on the farm and ranch, they left chores to be done, and they taught us how to work together at an early age, and we were imprinted, literally, and I think that's important. I think that's really missing from our culture today. Learning how to achieve and accomplish things together. And in those days, if you didn't get your chores done, there was a thing called a switch that you made. So it was just a different day and time, but we had great parents, and they didn't condone everything we did, but they somehow stood by us even when we were wrong.
So your new reality show, Honky Tonk Ranch, premieres on the Cowboy Channel April 8th and captures some of the action on that family ranch we mentioned earlier. What can viewers expect from this show?
Well, they're going to find out just how crazy our family is. But it's a fun show, and we keep a lot of humor in it. In some of our music, there's quite a bit of humor as well. But we go in several directions. Being from Florida, it's one of the things we want to accomplish on this show is it always has run me crazy when you go out on the road and people say, you're from Florida and you live on a ranch. I didn't know they had cows in Florida. Well, that just runs me crazy. Well, yeah, we do. We have one of the largest cow-calf operations in the United States, and it's a big ranching country. And so I think that will help establish the fact, of Florida's contribution to agriculture.
Now, in addition to the TV show, you're also releasing your autobiography, Let Your Love Flow, Life and Times of the Bellamy Brothers, and that comes out on April 17th. What can listeners expect to read, aside from just the stories behind the hits?
Well, I think that one of the most interesting parts to me is some of the background on how we grew up. The area we grew up in and the people that we grew up around was pretty diverse. Florida was it was and is somewhat still a kind of a crazy place. It's because it's always attracted, an eclectic group of people. And we grew up around people who were Cubans and Italians and Czechoslovakians, and we had a neighbor, an old neighbor who was, the only way I could describe her was an African-American Indian. And she lived to be 100 years old she had an old shanty with herbs and trinkets. We thought she was a witch for a long time. But
we were scared to death of her as kids.
Our parents, would take her, food and stuff, and the mailman used to leave a shot of whiskey at her mailbox every day. And
Must have worked.
You can't get mail service like that anymore, But we grew up around a lot of very interesting characters, and our parents were friends with all of these people and interacted with all of them, and it was a pretty colorful youth.
And just to wrap up today, as a farm to fame success story, as former FFA members and as veterans in the country music industry, both on the stage and behind the scenes, what advice or tips do you have for our listeners who may want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think probably the hardest thing to do is give advice, because everybody's path seems to be different, Ours, I wish we could have gone more directly to what we were trying to achieve, but, we went in such a roundabout way. And a lot of times I think there's a lot of fate involved in what you do, because some things came to us when we were least expecting them. So
I think the thing you can't do, of course, is give up. It's just
especially if you have a passion for it. I mean, if you really have the passion and that's what you want to stick with it.
Yeah. I think that it's hard to tell young people what you did, because we probably, if the truth is known, we probably had more failures than success, but nobody knows that. We just keep that little secret. But that happens. That's pretty much how everybody's life is. But there's an old Jackson Brown song, forget about the losses and exaggerate the wins. That's what we do.
Well, that is an excellent quote to end on today. Thank you so much for joining us, Howard and David. And if you'd like to hear more from Howard and David, be sure to catch our extended interview. You're going to find that on our website, ruralradio147.com. Stay tuned. There's more FFA Today straight ahead here on Rural Radio.